There we go.
Woohoo!
All right. So anyway, we're going to put this on YouTube, and it's going to be tied to our Facebook page. So the idea is to have these training sessions that we do almost every other week now, where it's there for small business owners just like you guys. So the key to it is keeping it small, and actually where we learn is when we have a discussion. So what I'm going to do is go through some slides and just basically present a topic. Then we can discuss that as we get to the end, but ask questions as we go. And ready? We're going to get started. This is what we're going to cover today. So I got to wake this computer up. Recruiting, training, and retention. 3 areas that I've spent a lot of effort in my career working with clients, large and small, but it's the same thing that's there wherever you go. There's challenges with recruiting. And then once you have the team, developing training and then retaining them. And I've got some expenses that I'll talk about here in just a moment, what it costs when you lose an employee. But there was a Gallup poll that was there of 1 million workers, and it identified the number one reason. You can read right there what the number one reason that people left their job. Aside from that, we'll get into some other reasons, but this is what I want you to really focus on. The average cost of an employee, replacing an employee, from recruiting costs, training cost, and lack of production and during that whole time frame is about $40,000 for every employee that you have to replace. So when you have somebody that quits, the average across the country is about $40,000. Just keep that in the back of your mind. But besides the number one reason of being a bad boss, someone that you've had the good bosses and the bad bosses. Nobody likes to work for a bad boss. 75% left voluntarily because their boss they didn't like their boss. So that's as of last year, right about the time that the pandemic hit. Other reasons that people quit: lack of appreciation. And you'll hear me use this phrase, if I've worked with you one-on-one at all, is that people remember how you make them feel. And you can include somebody in your team or make them feel excluded. And the idea is to let them know that their role is important and that they're appreciated for the effort that they do. You can't fake that. I mean, that's got to be sincere. It can't just be sunshine for no reason. The other reason is just not managing their schedule and burning themselves out. And I had one of my first bosses in the Air Force. He told me, he says, if you don't have anything to do, don't do it here. And his phrase was to just remind you that your personal time is just as important as your work time. But when you're here, be there. And I remember that phrase, be there, and meaning that when you're here, you give your best effort. But if you don't have anything to do, get out of here and go spend some time with your family or yourself and whatever you like to do. But we have to balance our work and play times. This is important now. If you look at this, and I think that this is going to continue to affect people as we start coming out of this pandemic and all the lockdown, is people that are working remotely, is having flex hours. That's a nice benefit to have. But what I'm seeing is that it's difficult right now to find employees because a lot of them want flexible hours. They want to be able to work remotely. My brother and his wife are still having some frustrating words with one another because she upped and changed her career because she didn't want to go back into working direct. She liked working from home. And she changed her career and found another hospital to work for. And he didn't quite agree with that decision. And it's funny how they've looked at it. But tying that in to also one key factor that affect people's view on their job is the culture of the organization. We hear a lot about that. And I'm going to touch on that at the end of this presentation, just to really talk about some things that you can do to really be conscientious of the culture in which your employees work. But it is so important to have a good team. You have to have a good culture. We'll go back to that. Lack of engagement, which is different than the lack of appreciation. Engagement is really involving somebody into problem solving, getting your team's opinions on any changes that you're doing. They need to know that they matter, and it's not just something that is voicing an opinion. It's actually engaging in problem solving, engaging in whatever the mission of the organization is. Let them be very an integral part of it, and let them know that how that ties to the mission. You saw the slide just a moment. Mildred Martinez, she's here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. But Mildred, can you wave and let everybody know where you are there?
Good morning. I'm Mildred. I work for Partnership Employment. We're a staffing firm based here locally in Worcester.
Mildred, I asked Mildred to come on and join us because she has spent several years recruiting talent for clients of Partnership Employment. They have offices in different parts of the country, but what they do is two types of recruiting. One is the traditional headhunting, where they find an employee, and they're a professional organization helps you do that, where you pay them a fee for doing that service. But there's also something else that I've used with clients all over in various parts of the country. Mildred's actually recruited for some of my clients. It affords that business the opportunity to do what I say is what I call test driving the employee. It's a lot of work to find an employee. Their specialty, Partnership Employment or any other staffing agency, their specialty is finding those targeted employees. And it was interesting for me in my time knowing this company is that they also use staffing companies to help them find employees for their organization. So that tells me that there's an efficiency and skills that are there. If you need a targeted employee, you want to find somebody that can help you get good candidates for employment. That test drive of the employee is something that's there too. You don't know if this employee is a right fit. So it's always good to test drive somebody to see if they're going to fit with the mission and the organization and the team that you have. The staffing agency is one of those. I asked Mildred to come on board, not as a commercial for you guys to use a staffing agency, but because she does it every day. And she can tell you some of the headaches that she's facing right now coming out of the pandemic, and look at what some of the tips that a recruiter that's doing this every day can help you with. Mildred, can you go from there?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So as Thomas had mentioned, I've been with Partnership Employment a little over 8 years in the city, born and bred Worcesterite. So I have been fortunate enough to see the economic growth that we have, in the city, kind of the lulls that we've seen. And I'm really excited about kind of this new chapter that we're in with all of the universities and colleges, kind of investing back into the city. Hopefully, we'll see how the ballpark, brings in. I drove through Kelly Square last night with my 16-year-old that's just got her learner's permit, and I think I almost had a heart attack. But it's an exciting time. And as a recruiter, if you would have asked me a year ago what the market would look like, obviously nobody expected the pandemic. So it's been a huge adjustment. But I think, when Tom went over what employees are looking for, spot on. I talk to candidates day in and day out. Number one, thing that they're looking for from an employer is, appreciation. They're looking for flexibility. One of the things that happened, as we all know, when COVID hit, everyone had to shift. And now we're getting back into kind of a new normal, so to speak. But individuals, have found that they can work remotely, or, the flexibility, needing to have maybe time to arrange, childcare or family care, or, elder care with, ailing, older family members. That's huge. That's huge. And it's something that if an employer is not open to, you could potentially miss out, on candidates. But the great thing about, what Tom had mentioned, so you'll find, as you're looking to hire for your open roles, the person that seems absolutely, wonderful, they check all of your boxes, you meet with them and you say, oh my goodness, they were sent from above. And then they start, and you slowly realize, maybe all of the things that seemed, that couldn't be too good to be true, does, slowly, you start seeing kind of the truth of the matter. So having a flexibility where you bring someone in that is going to prove themselves, like a contract to hire, attempt to hire, where you're utilizing, an agency that can help you vet A lot of what your expenses are looking for individuals is spent on, Indeed, job boards, your time, interviewing, calling through candidates. If I didn't recruit all day long, I don't know how someone that was running a small business would do it with all of the, additional tasks that you have. Recruiting is a huge, piece. Being able to go with your gut as well. Maybe the person that you see the potential in, maybe doesn't necessarily check all of the boxes, but you see they're a great team player, when they're talking about their previous, roles and the soft skills. I think really, keeping an open mind as you're looking for individuals, is huge. And once you do hire someone in, engaging them. I think that the market is hot. There's a lot of companies that are, hiring. And if you don't keep your employees engaged and in the dialogue and in what's happening, individuals lose interest quickly. And believe me, it's just a click away on Indeed or, on their phone to start looking for, a new job. So kind of appreciating those individuals, and really utilizing them. I think that when you talk about, a strong leader, it's utilizing your staff and kind of helping, bring them out and delegating, making sure that you feel really confident in your team, so that you can give away those responsibilities that maybe you've tucked away, to your side.
Mildred, quick question for you
Yeah.
as you're going in there. You mentioned temp to hire. I'm not so sure that everybody's going to understand what that is, but that my hillbilly way of looking at it is that's that test drive period, right?
Yes.
One of the benefits that I found in using that is when you have an employee as a business owner, I'm not an HR expert. I know that Sarah's worked in academia for a while and has gained a lot of experience in human resources, but you guys are very knowledgeable on all the compliance requirements, and they change ongoingly. They change with administrations federally and at the state level. What are some of the key pitfalls that Massachusetts has for employers today that you would say are uh-ohs or watch out for?
Absolutely. So the first, first and foremost, I think, a lot of small businesses maybe think about, let's 1099 or contract an employee. It's a huge no-no. Being able to bring someone on your payroll or being able to utilize an outside service like a staffing firm, so you don't run into any legalities with the IRS or the state being protected in that sense against any of those liabilities. Health insurance is huge, making sure that any employee that is on your payroll has the proper coverage. So, if you utilize, an outside firm, you're covered under that piece, because that firm would take care of any requirements, under ACA, making sure that, with the new FMLA, changes, those also making sure that you're in compliance, that you are, deducting not only your normal state taxes and SUDA, Social Security, Medicaid, but this new one, in particular here in Massachusetts, that recently, came into effect at the end of last year, and sick time. So, here in Massachusetts, it's sick time laws. So making sure you're in compliance. So for every 30 hours that an employee works, they accrue 1 hour of sick time. And it's very specific and really open to how they can use it and how employers have to track it. So there's a lot of, different pieces that, come into play. And, if you're, kind of on the fence with someone, or you don't necessarily know how long a position or, what the future may hold, kind of having that contract period, in the beginning, so that you can kind of get up to speed and have someone else kind of do that legwork and make sure that you're in compliance, really is a huge, benefit, so that when you're ready, maybe 3, 4, 5 months down the line, and you say, hey, you know what? This is a keeper. This is someone we want to invest in. Then you can get all of your things in line.
Excellent. Thank you very much about that. Do you have time that you can stick around maybe to the end of this and answer some questions that we would have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Mildred. And it's a good segue for us to talk about the next slide as we get back into this. That's Recruiting 101. The first bullet. Get the right people on the bus. That's a Jim Collins phrase. And I find him as a great author and a good business leader, but he's got this concept after researching the top 20% of the Fortune 500 companies out there, that the team is one of the biggest differentiators in making that the difference between a good company to a great company. And I'm going to highlight this with some examples towards the end, but he says, get the right people on the bus. And after you get the right people on your team, you want to be able to get them in the right seat on the bus. And you do that with really identifying the position before you ever think about the personality of the people that you're recruiting. You don't build the position for the person, you build the position for the business, and you recruit for that specific position. You do that with a good, clear, crisp job description. I would strongly recommend to all my clients that you write these job descriptions before you ever think about recruiting. And the idea is you want to fill somebody that's going to be able to accomplish that. And what I like to look at are 3 factors: aptitude, drive, and character. When I'm doing those recruiting, and I want to build that job description looking at those things. Aptitude is just absent of training. Does that person have the ability to do the job? Do they have the ability to learn to do the job? Drive, when they get up in the morning, do they think like a winner? Do they think that they want to, when it's snowing outside, are they the ones going to call in and say, I can't make it today? Or they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to get there somehow, some way. I might be a little bit late, but I'm going to make it to the team. And the last part is character. And it's not just doing the right thing when nobody's looking, or saying and not lying, cheating, or stealing. It's being able to be part of that team that you can count on them when things get tough. The other element that goes to this, as I just want to make a little side note to it, that often gets lost. It's not just a privilege to work for your company. It's hard that a lot of employers, I find, they look at that from their perspective. I've got an opportunity for this person to get a job. There's a huge selling element to it, and we forget that we're selling ourselves and our company and our team and our mission to this potential employee. It's a huge element, I think, in recruiting and getting the top people for your team. The other thing that you want to do is really think about compensation plans. And I list that separately from the job description, because a good comp plan, you want your employees to work their compensation plan. And if you've ever heard an employer complain, well, she's just gaming her comp plan, that's all they're doing. They're doing what human nature is. People will work for that comp plan. That compensation plan needs to reward what you want it to reward, what you expect them to be able to accomplish in their job. I like to help devise compensation plans that have like a base salary element to it, where it's steady. And looking at compensation, the person has got to be able to afford to work at your job. And that's including yourself too. The company's got to be able to afford you. We all have market value. And you think about that market value. What is this employee? What am I worth on the fair market working for another employer? Well, can we afford to pay them? You have to be competitive in that field. But having that compensation plan laid out before you do your recruiting is important, because it's going to be a good discussion point when you're actually doing your interviews. Here's another point that I think gets lost. We get busy and we're working in the company all the time trying to make things happen. But you back up a second and you think about, I want to have people that have aligned values with me. And this is something that the military takes excruciating time doing. But one thing that transitions, regardless of what branch of service that a military member is in, once they identify each other as veterans, they have a whole different relationship with one another. And that's because we know that we all have the same shared and aligned values. And in that, it's duty, honor, and country. But the integrity side is there, and you'll catch a lot of veterans to look at. Are you dealing with a civilian, or are you dealing with a veteran? And you watch how they react to one another. It's because their value system they don't really know with the civilian side. Whether with fellow veterans, you have a good understanding of what's important to them. I put this on here because I think assigned values is an important thing as you're building a team. And when you're thinking about your future, where you're taking your company, core values, it's not just an eye chart that you would put on the wall that this is what we believe. It's something that is aligned with you. Do you want people on your team that think like you? Do they believe like you? And when you put your core values together, the people that come on your team, they need to be aligned with you on that. Otherwise, you're sacrificing the moral side of what you are or who you are, and also what your team stands for. All right. The interview itself, Mildred's company, I learned some things from one of the clients that they had, and they've worked with some pretty impressive clients before. But Goldman Sachs company, I learned from them down in Manhattan, they had a 6-interview process. Now, if you could just think that if you're applying for a job, these jobs are high paying, by the way, these are $200,000 a year plus jobs, but you have to get yourself all the way from wherever you are in the country for this job interview down to Manhattan. And if you've ever spent any time in New York City, you know that getting there is not easy, but staying there, it's very expensive. And this is on your own dime, by the way. 6 times you got to make, the pandemic's a little different, but absent of that, you would have to go through this scenario where you got to get yourself there. It's on your dime. You have to pay for it, and just the hassle of getting there. But they do that because the interview itself is a moment. And you'll hear me use that term a lot. I love the book, The Power of Moments by Dan and Chip Heath. And the reason is because where we're interviewing people, you take Mildred with her company, they do it every day. But to many of us that are looking for a job in that process, it's not something that we do every day. That's an important event in our lives. We don't change jobs that often in our lifetime. So when we interview, it's a nerve-wracking experience, but it's a moment. Now we can use that dynamic for us to make it memorable with that employee. And the idea, if you think about what do I want to accomplish in this interview, I want this person to want to come to work for us, but more than anything, I want to find out if he or she has got what it takes to be on our team. And at the same time, I want to make it a memorable event for them so that it's working on our brand as a company. References. Do you check references? If you don't, I strongly recommend it. And looking at somebody's references, and here's the interesting thing about it, there's 2 sides to this. But if you have a bad employee, when you call and you check the references, they want to tell you about it. Now, whether or not they should is a matter of legality, because they could expose them as a company. That's why you'll get a lot of companies have a policy that they will only tell you the period of time that person worked here. And I'm sure Mildred has seen many people have called you guys and asking for references. How do you guys, Mildred, let me ask you, how do you resist the urge to tell that person asking the question about a really bad employee that worked for you?
Well, again, you don't want to open yourself out to the liabilities or legalities. So very matter of fact, stating dates of employment, maybe title, and usually the other one, and it's kind of a giveaway, I suppose. Are they eligible for rehire or not? So generally speaking, if someone says no, it's a way for that to say, hey, there might have been some other red flags there.
What do you say when you're not on the record, you're talking internally about that candidate? Don't ever send them to another client, right?
Right, exactly. Do not use DNU.
Oh, is that a code that you guys have? DNU, yes. Do not use?
Yes.
Well, there we just learned something. The interview is also used to screen that candidate. And we talked about the aligned values, but you're seeing that candidate putting on their Sunday go to meeting clothes, and you're going to see them at their best. I want to try to find a chink in their armor when I'm interviewing them. And I've actually had people get up during an interview and walk out of me when I'm recruiting for myself or also for a client. And you take that, again, using that moment, And I just ask a simple question. A lot of times, if I really want to know if it's an important manager position, how well do you think you're doing in this interview? And then just sort of sit back and I watch what they do with it. And I let the silence really make them sweat. The reason for doing that, I'm finding how they're going to handle pressure. I know that the interview is high in pressure. They don't know why I'm asking this. And I've heard some really good replies to that question. And I've seen some really bad reactions to it where people have gotten up and left, like I said. The idea is, and I don't necessarily recommend that you do that, but do something where you ask a question where that person is put under pressure. And the reason is you want to see how they react under pressure during the interview. And if they crack or they have some kind of an odd reaction, it's going to come out. You want it to happen during the interview versus after you really like this person, you offer them a job. Expectations. And not just during the interview process, but I like to use the term managed expectations. They understand what you expect from all employees that are going to work on the team. They also understand what you expect during the interview and the process. They have expectations as well. How many interviews am I going to go through? Who do I meet with next? What is your interview process? Having that be a laid down scenario really gives a good image of professionalism on your behalf. This is what I think is an important element too, are the intangibles. And I've got a client that brand new business, and they're growing and they're looking to expand this year, and 2 midwives. And they can't necessarily afford at the point while they're in the startup phase, but they have so many other reasons for working for that company. And number one is it's just a really cool atmosphere that they have. The dynamics that the 2 have starting out this company, you'd want to be on their team. I bring out that because the intangibles that what they bring are reasons or why buys, why customers and clients want to be clients of theirs, but also why do employees want to be part of that tribe? That's a cool phrase to use, but having it, don't underestimate the power of your intangibles, because there's a lot of things that a lot of reasons that people are going to work for your company. Money's not the number one motivator. The atmosphere and the culture is. All right. After you get a team on board, I've got this slide. I'm just going to hit some points on training, how important it is. But onboarding, you hear that phrase misused, overused, or really it's underemphasized. But I talked about that we don't interview that often, but when you start the first day of a job, go back in your own history. How important was that first job for you? How did it set the tone for you for your employment there? The day that you onboard with a company, it's going to set the tone for what your expectations are from day one on, and it's going to make them feel a certain way. It's going to make them feel like they either belong to an organization that's a winning organization, or I'm on a team where they're a little disorganized. How do you want that person to feel the first day that they work for you? And just a side note to that, you'll see some companies have a special parking spot for people that are onboarding. But after you come on board, you need to have a good plan, that plan of what it takes to basically get your license to do your job. What are my expectations? And then how do I accomplish these things? And you go back to how people learn what to do, how to do it, but the why behind it. It's important to tell people what to do, show them how to do it, and then explain to them why we do it this specific way. And then those non-negotiables that we talked about, they need to be included in a handbook. And I know in depth that Mildred and their team, they have a pretty thorough handbook for working with employees. But the idea on it is your employees are there. I like to look at the reason for having a handbook, not being that CYA document, cover your rear, but having it be a document that's there that your team can refer back to, that we've thought about this. And it's an ongoing living document that as things change, this is how we solve problems as a team, that you refer people back to it, not just for training, but as a sort of a navigation manual. Policies and procedures. Having a policy and having a procedure for doing things. Otherwise, you're giving the appearance that you're making it up as you go. You're shooting from the hip. All the phrases that go with that, wag, wild ass guess. You're a company with organization to you, and we have a policy for doing certain things, especially for things that are important to the team. KPIs, key performance indicators. This is really a report card for your employees. Going over that during your training session is important, but reminding them from the training period and the execution phase is that you want to be able to have key performance indicators. And I'll bring it up later, but we talk about, inspecting what you expect. Those key performance indicators are what you expect. Having those laid out and being able to cover that with what you expect from an employee and that you objectively measure their performance. And this is how we're going to measure that performance and how it ties to the overall team mission. And what that does, it will sort of relate to them how their job and how it has an impact to that mission, going back to that engaging employees and adding meaning to what they do. There's a phrase I like to use, and Sarah, don't laugh when I say this because she hears me use a lot of my colloquialisms at times, but to be unclear is to be unkind. Managing those expectations, both with customers, clients, and employees is an important thing. You can't expect somebody to do something that they don't know. So to be unclear is to be unkind. Use that all the time, probably overuse it, but it's something that I'd like for you to remember. What are the chances of advancement? Everybody wants to know what's the next step. And going back to the midwives that I mentioned, they're bringing on a nurse midwife, and her first step is to come on board as an associate. Once she's there for a certain period of time, she's going to be eligible to become a junior partner. Then after a junior partner, she's going to have some tenure. The next step is to becoming a full partner. But explaining that out in a roadmap is something that's important. I got this slide for you just as and it's also in the slide deck that Sarah sent you, but just some key reasons that employees stay when they are paid well, appreciated, involved in decisions, promoted, challenged, and mentored. The last one on there is important. And you can go back to your own experiences when you've had somebody that has actually taken their time to teach you how to be on this team. That's an important thing, to be a big brother or big sister to somebody that's new. This is a quick slide. It's from a book from one of my favorite authors. His name's Patrick Lencioni, but he's got the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I'm just going to quickly go over that, but I highly recommend that if you are in a leadership role, that you understand what his 5 dysfunctions of a team are. And the first is the absence of trust, the fear of conflict, the lack of commitment, the avoidance of accountability, and at the top of the pyramid, inattention to results. But if you ever look and have ever worked for an organization that has a bad culture, you can say that it's going to be 1, 2, or up to all 5 of these. They have that. You got to be able to trust your teammates. Trust, and it's not just they're not going to lie, cheat, or steal. You have to trust that they have your best interest at heart and that they're focused on the same mission. The second one that's on there, the fear of conflict, that's one that escapes many people. And I've worked this with clients often, where we'll get a dynamic going in a staff meeting where you don't want to, rub paint. That's a racing term, but you don't want to have conflict with other employees. Conflict is healthy. It's how you manage the conflict that's unhealthy. You don't want to make it personal, but keeping it professional. If you don't have conflict, you're not going to be able to ultimately achieve the best decisions for the company. Commitment to one another, commitment to the organization, and commitment to the mission. That's got to be there. If it's not, why are you just working for a paycheck? Accountability goes back to those key performance indicators, those KPIs, and supervisors inspecting what they expect. When you do that, you're going to see just like parents have children, it's just like inspecting what you expect and paying attention to the grades that they bring home from school. If you expect your child to do well in school, you're going to look at that report card. You're going to look at the homework, going to pay attention to what they're doing. Are they doing homework at home? Are they doing well in school? It all goes together. It's the same thing that goes along with employees. Last thing I'll say to that, it's hard to lead somebody that you don't really care about, and employees know that. So you're conveying that you actually care about them when you're looking at the details of what they do with their job. This is a quote that I love to use. Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And that is so true for a bad organization. And it's taking time just to listen. And Nelson Mandela, he's got a rule of thumb that he uses with staff meetings, that he lets his team talk. He has an agenda that's already prepared, they'll go and they'll follow that agenda. And then afterwards, what he'll do, he'll be the last one to talk. He waits to the end to talk, but he's listening to how everybody interacts. He's looking for that conflict that we talked about to try to farm it, but he's actually listening to the harmony of the team. He's listening to what individuals have to say, but that his team all knows that when he's there, that he's listening to them. This is something I just want to use as a snapshot. It's a concept that I've used with recruiting for a long time. And on the left, the y-axis, you'll see that word heart. That's an acronym. The heart stands for honesty, energy, accountability, respect, and trust. It's just basically dealing with core values. And on the x-axis at the bottom, it's job performance. And the reason that I put these together, and I've used this in training, but looking at teams, team development, and so forth, is we all want to recruit for the top right quadrant that's there with the 2+ symbols, what I call rock stars. But the reality is we're going to recruit from people in all 4 quadrants of this. And we need to think about that when we're aligning values and recruiting people. You'll have people on your team that are really good at core values, the heart model that's on the y-axis there, but their job performance is a little down. I would put them in the top left quadrant. And you have people that are really good at the job, but their ethics aren't really there, or their values aren't necessarily aligned with that of the team. That's going to be in the bottom right quadrant. And of course, nobody wants anybody on your team that's going to fill that bottom left quadrant where they're bad on core values and bad on job performance. I use this just as a snapshot for you right now, because it's hard to take somebody that's in the bottom right quadrant where their job performance is high, but core values is not important to them, and expect to change their core values. It's almost impossible to get them up into the top right category. But if that person's got the right aptitude for the job, it's relatively easy with training to take somebody that's in the top left quadrant that's good on core values, and their job performance needs to get improved. Now, the reality of this, if you were to take a snapshot of the people that are on your team, it's going to be subjective to your opinion, and you actually rate each other. But you'll see if you rate members of the team together, that each individual on your team, we're going to see the same thing of that individual, what quadrant that they're in. And of course, now the flip side of that, we all want to assume that we're in the top right quadrant. But the reality is that when we get that feedback from one another, going back to that brutal honesty and candor between one another, that we're all looking to improve. What quadrant am I in? You know, my coworkers are going to be the best ones to teach me that. But that's really getting to an advanced level for a team to be able to discuss that with one another. So that's going to take us to culture. And I'm just going to cover this briefly, because I believe this is one of the most important elements of having a good team, is having this concept of one team, one fight. That's a Norman Schwarzkopf phrase going back to my time in the Air Force and Desert Storm. But basically one team with one focus, and we're working on this together. But when you look at that, we have those core values that we mentioned, those expectations. These are non-negotiable. Duty, honor, and country. If you don't meet that in the military, you're out. No deviation from it. And there's a lot of things that's there in the medical field. There's things that you can't do. You can't be a registered nurse or practice medicine if you break or violate some of these codes of ethics. Can't, you're out. What are those non-negotiables with your team? Do you have non-negotiables? But what are those values? The next element is what I call 360 feedback. This is probably one of the most important steps in changing the culture and maintaining a good culture. Excuse me. 360 feedback, 360 is 360 degrees, like in a circle. And having periodic feedback sessions at least once a quarter, but I recommend doing them monthly with all your employees. They're private. Remember this phrase: criticize in private, praise in public. You want to always give the pats on the back in public as best you can. But when you have these periodic sessions, when I know that I'm going to be meeting with my boss on a regular basis, my performance is automatically going to come up. I know that growing up, and also with my kids, that every time a report card was coming out, I had to talk to both my mother and my father about it. Same thing with my kids. They knew that every time that report card came out, that we had to have a discussion. It's inspecting what you expect. 360 feedback, having them being on routine sessions, we're there to discuss performance. That's what they're about. But the 360 side of it is I want you to evaluate your own performance, and we're going to talk about that. I want you to evaluate the performance of the team and how I'm doing as a leader. That's the 360-degree candid conversation that we have, and it's there to listen, but it's also there to have good, clear communication with one another. And the third bullet that's on there, managed expectations. If we talk about a priority, these are the priorities for improvement. These are the priorities for the mission. These are the priorities for your career advancement. Managed expectations. You know what I expect from you. I know what you expect from me as an employer. And then the last one is that performance is always tied to the mission and relating it back to that mission. You hear the mission, you see people put up mission statements and so forth, but we need to have that focus of that team on the mission. And we do that with these 360 performance feedback sessions. This is a team. I like that photo because it shows a team that's out there doing something that's a challenge to them. It's being a row that, they have the coxswain in front, but you have the power of the team all working together. If that team is not working in unison, they're not going to make it over the way. It's just an interesting picture. But listening to this, you can only have one standard of conduct for a team. If you have multiple standards, you're gonna have infighting amongst the people that are on that team. You're gonna have subjective evaluations. Then you're gonna have, it's sort of like having Big Brother getting all the preferential treatment at home if you ever have a sibling. And why is he not allowed? Why is he not expected to do as well in school as I am? Why are you holding him to a different standard than you are me? You never want to have that on a team, because I promise you, if you do, what you're going to end up with, you're going to end up with conflict. You're going to end up with people feeling left out, and it's just the antiquity of a team. It's the antithesis of being able to have an effective team. Marketing is a huge factor in this too. There's an external and an internal brand to a company, and understanding what that brand is important. Your brand, it takes time to develop, and you can think about good companies, you can think about bad companies that are there, but that brand is important. The tribe, or the people that are part of that team, the family and friends and the employees that work there, the people that are really disciples of the company, they're people that know the brand and they believe in it, but they're also ambassadors of that brand. They're going to tell all their families and friends about how cool this is a place to work. And here's a good little exercise that I recommend for you. If you ever go to Chick-fil-A, go to the one in Worcester, and you can hear people complain all the time how long that line is. Well, it's not fun sitting in that line, but go there any day that they're open. How long is the line? How can a company do that day in and day out? Then go to McDonald's and look at their drive-through line. There's a reason for that. When you get to the drive-through window, ask the employee just one simple question. Ask them, do you like working for Chick-fil-A, or do you like working for McDonald's? And just whatever, go with their answer. Ask them why. Do the same thing the next time you fly and you go by Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, they don't like assigned seating. And you look at some of the things that they have. It's like a budget airlines. But man, you talk to the employees that work there. Do you like working for this company? Ask them. And then when they give you an answer, do the same thing. Ask them why. Go to Solomon Pond Mall, go to the Apple store and look at the employees that are working there. Ask them the same question. I did this a few years ago when I was at a department store. One that was an iconic store for me growing up was Sears. And I said, man, these people aren't happy when I'm here. So I asked them that question, and it was disunity all over the place, but frustration. Over the weekend, I was at Home Depot and I noticed the same thing. I don't know what's happened to them during the pandemic, but their employees are definitely not happy. And you walk in there, you just got a feeling that they've lowered the bar for the quality of employees that are there. And I can remember years ago having frustrations with customer service with DirecTV. DirecTV was bought by AT&T shortly after that. But you can look at that and I promise you that's going to be a good estimate for you to know which public companies you can look at on which ones to invest in for your 401ks. But think about this on the small level. Ask your employees, do you like working here? And if they're open with you, they're going to tell you why. And that's in your 360 feedback session. But it ties to your brand. We've talked about inspecting what you expect. I've said that enough to drive that point home. One team, one fight. You're focused on the same goal. But I'm going to end with this. four-letter word that applies to business. It was actually, I stole this from Patrick Lencioni. I was listening to his podcast this morning, and he says a four-letter word that's that's lost on a lot of companies, the word love. And if you think about this, it goes back to my time in the military, and it's why it resonated with me. But this podcast was talking about he's old guy, really old guy that was winning in golf. And what he was doing, it was just one of the recent golf tournaments. His caddy was his 24-year-old son. So you have this guy that's 46 years old and has his 24-year-old son caddying for him. But at this old age of winning a golf tournament, he's won like 3 tournaments this year. I don't know his name, but on the story, what's interesting about it is that the relationship that he has with his son, he's involving his son on this team, but his son is giving him coaching as he's doing this. But he's got it in his heart that I've got to do well to have my son be on a winning team. I've got to do well. I don't want to let him down. And when I heard that story, I was reminded of my time in the military, going back to wars that are fought. And we learned early on that troops in the Air Force, Army, Marines, whatever branch of service that they're in, they're not fighting necessarily because they don't like that enemy. What they're fighting for is the people that are on their team. They develop this relationship with one another, and that carries over. That when you have that bond with somebody, you can find a veteran that people that they served with for years after the fact, they still have that bond. It's like yesterday, even 20, 25 years that go by. Your teams that a good, effective team will have that affiliation and affection for one another the same way. And if you think about that, do you have somebody on your team that you don't really care about? Do you have somebody on your team that doesn't care about the others on that team? But it's that camaraderie that really builds unison. And I promise you this, when you go to Chick-fil-A, Southwest, or Apple, you'll see the personal relationships that are there with those teams. They have that dynamic. The military calls it esprit de corps, but the simple way of looking for it, it's called love. And that's having that affection for one another. And, I recommend, if you listen to At the Table with Patrick Lencioni, it's his latest podcast, but the one that's out there I truly enjoyed. All right. I talked a lot today, talked fast. This is the first time we've done this presentation, but I wanted to give you an overview of recruiting and then talk about getting the right people on the bus with that. Then when you get them there, get them in the right seat on the bus, it's assessing their skills and training them. And then really hammer home the importance of retaining. And what you're going to find is that if you have the ability to recruit top performers, train them well, remembering the power of moments from their first day of onboarding and training, that you will build a culture of winners. And there's a reason that the New England Patriots won as many Super Bowls as they did. And it's just not just because they had one great quarterback. It's because they had an effective team. And you can look at that historically over time, that it's there. Building that team is all about the culture. You can build a culture of championships, but doing that, it's having the process and procedure for everything that you do, including how we recruit. We're okay on time. We've still got a few minutes, but I've been talking fast, and let me turn this off is probably the best way of doing it. And let's see where we can get to where we can talk to one another and see if anybody has any questions to talk about. So bear with me while I turn this off. And stop the share. Okay. Anybody have any questions we want to talk about? We have Mildred still with us, and I know that Sarah is, she's got some experience with HR. So let's talk about some of the headaches and pitfalls with recruiting people.
Well,
don't be shy.
Well,
Jennifer.
Hi. Okay. I was raising my hand in case, because I can't see everybody that's in the room. So I just want to say thank you so much. Tom, this was really, really helpful. And I actually work at Chick-fil-A. I'm in the Playland. Can you see?
No way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm at the one in,
I didn't get paid for this, by the way.
No, I thought it was really great, and I appreciated that you didn't know where I was from, because it is. We try really, really hard to build the culture, but I will tell you right now, it's an incredible challenge for us to find team members. We have lots of high school students who love the food and want to work here. They would quit school and work right now. But to be quite honest, finding those adults that are 18 plus, it's like chasing unicorns. Our team is tired. Our team has worked really hard ever since the pandemic started. I mean, I'm the HR business partner, but I work in the drive-through. It's a blessing that I get to sit and have this time with you guys today, because normally I'm out there taking orders, but I wanted to prioritize this. So I guess maybe to some of the other panelists, if there's a way that you could give some thoughts on trying to find those hourly team members that aren't just checking off a box for unemployment, but actually like looking to get a paycheck and not just a stimulus check. It's really difficult right now. Thank you.
Well, I'm really blown away that you're here, because I really respect that company. I know Mr. Kathy built a heck of a legacy there with what you guys have. Let me ask you a question while we have you, though. You're having trouble finding those unicorns as you described. How important is it to get that right person on the bus?
It's really important. It's really important, because we want longevity, and we want them to understand that there's a career and a future with Chick-fil-A, that it isn't just working fast food, but that there's more to it. And we do have a mission and vision and values that we share. Our ultimate goal is to be the world's most caring company. And we try to demonstrate that through and throughout all of the processes that you have kind of identified. But this is unprecedented times. And so that's why I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to come to this meeting and see if there's any little gems that I can take away. So.
No, were there?
Yeah, you validated that there are definitely, we're doing the right things. But I do like some of your, what did you call them? Not your Thomisms, but your some of the things that you said. I think for us, because our team has been working so hard, and because we are quite frankly exhausted, some of those moments with each other, we have to kind of get back to like why we're here, the why, and kind of come together on that. And I think at least at the leadership level, that will help. But again, adults 18 plus, like, where are they, guys? I need them.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. That why is a big factor. And we talk about that a lot with clients. And if you've ever sat with a one-on-one with me very much, you know that I focus you to Simon Sinek's The Power of Why, but his golden circle, he's got a good TED talk that's out there where he talks about people buy what you do. They don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And it's a very good little 15-minute little section that I think that would do a whole lot to help add those intangibles that are there. And if you ever want to watch somebody in action with their why, watch an interview with Elon Musk. Elon Musk just they had a rocket launch this last week, and he's an engineer, and his career has been something a little bit of an oddball, but when he talks with so much passion, and his why is so strong that you just want to be around him. You want to be on his team. And to have that type of vision, it goes back to like what I use often with a lot of our clients is Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech. I have a dream. His speech was long before, or many years ago. But it's extended beyond his life many years, and it's still affecting people today. And it's having a better tomorrow, because it really instills hope with all of us. And having that something that's there that people can relate to is important. Mildred, anything that you would like to share that you picked up from that you'd want to add to it?
I, as a recruiter that works on very similar, kind of entry-level customer service roles, more on the behind the scenes, absolutely 100%, feel your pain, Jennifer. It's hard to compete when government benefits actually pay someone to stay at home instead of work. So it's something that I do slowly see, is starting to, shift, folks that maybe have been home, for the last year. Now, as schools are starting to open up, childcare and kind of the remote and hybrid, we're definitely seeing that. But it's a challenge when, we, for instance, had an admin that was working, for us for a few years. And when we laid her off, in the pandemic, she was making, 3 times her salary with all the extra incentives. How does, someone, that's in that situation that, needs to coordinate childcare, give that up, freely, to go to, back to work. So we're slowly seeing that, but absolutely. And, we see it across the board with our clients too. Not that makes you feel any better, but we are seeing now that, kids are starting to go back to school, full time, that is, shifting.
Tom?
Yes, ma'am.
Barry Bacon has a question.
Okay.
He wants to know where he can find information on the right compensation for various roles in his business. Like, where do you find what is an appropriate salary for X, Y, and Z?
Well, that's a great question. And my hesitation in answering it is because it depends. And I don't like it depends answers, but it does depend on market value. And it sounds impersonal when I say this, but everybody that's on this call, if we're working today, we have what I call a market value, an actual cash value. I can go out on the job market somewhere and I can get a job making X. I know that, and it's going to differ between what markets that I'm in, but we need to think of that term for ourselves, but think of that term for our employees more importantly. So when you think of a compensation plan, going back to it, can I afford this employee? What is their market value? And it's like with the midwives that we were talking about, the lady that they're recruiting, she's used to making $120,000 a year. But they look at it right now, we can only afford to pay $80,000 a year. Well, there's a big difference. How are you ever going to recruit somebody to go from, 2/3 of their current pay? Well, it goes back to those intangibles. It goes back to that organization. Do I want to take a step back now to going to to a better team? I've got one of my mentors in business. He's the only billionaire that I've ever met, and I know personally. He told me years ago when I was starting out fresh in business. He said, "Tom, there's a lot of things that motivate people. Money of which is not often one of them." And what's he know? What's that old man know? He's crazy. But I quickly learned over time that he's absolutely right, and I still think about that all the time. A lot of things that motivate people, money of which is not one of them. And if you have somebody that's working for you that says that maybe he or she they have a son who's in hockey, and you're able to get a signed hockey stick from one of the from one of these auctions that are out there at a nonprofit that you're waving and helping them raise money, and you find this hockey stick that you buy, and you give that hockey stick to that employee, and they can take it home to their son who's a hockey player. That shows that you listen and you care. And I will tell you that means so much more than just a bonus on money. And those type of things are right there with it. But you do still have to have a good, clear compensation plan. And to answer your question specifically, there are tools out there, and you can look at industry wide. We've got some tools that are tied with the Small Business Development Center that we can look at things nationally. I use a thing called Vertical IQ. And what that does, it looks at different industries and just gives me some trends that are in that industry. But part of that, I can look at their financials and I can see what their total compensation package is. What it does tell me, though, it gives me a point to sort of segue is, Sarah, what's one of my overused terms that I use all the time?
Knowledge is power.
Okay, knowledge is power. I didn't want to say that. I wanted you to say it for me, but I use that because vertical IQ, it just gives us knowledge about the industry. And one of the cool things with that is comparing notes like what we're doing right now. We can learn from each other. That's how we gain that knowledge, data, information, and knowledge. Ashley's on here, Ashley Fitzmeyer, and she works with pairing entrepreneurs together in E4Ever, right? Well, E4Ever, what they do is they have one of my best learning experiences was being part of a 20 group, which is a peer group for small business owners at the time. And you can have all the academic education that you want. And it's just like the students that we teach here at Clark. I teach a course, and some of the most brilliant minds you'll see, they're Ivy League level, and they come out with a master's in business administration or finance. But the moment you pair them up with an entrepreneur, they're going to realize, uh-oh, this is a little different than what the classroom is. And incredibly gifted and talented Gen Xers and and learning how to relate to a Gen Xer for somebody like me, it's an old fart, is a whole new language. But let me tell you, when you learn how to talk to a millennials are different than Gen Xers, and having to be able to relate to people is important. What I found is that the bridge, that if we focus on the same mission and they know that I care about their success, regardless if we're cultural differences or not, we can connect. That's what Ashley's organization does. It puts people together and allows them to share with one another, to share best practices, and more importantly, lessons learned. I like to call that the school of hard knocks. That's how we learn best, is from the school of hard knocks. Does that sum it up, Ashley, with what you guys do?
Yeah, no, that's great. I do have a question for you if we still have some time.
Yes, we do.
I mean, this was wonderful, I think, for us in thinking about not even so much just our organization and employees, but for our members, so the entrepreneurs that we work with and the groups we form. I was wondering if you could talk more about, in regard to retention and the standard of conduct. So when I hear that, and you had said you can only have one standard, and I'm wondering, what do you do with the tension between, when I hear standard of, like, I think often people can think about uniformity. And I know that's not the goal because we do want to bring different people together. But I'm just wondering, how do you set a standard of conduct, but still allow for room to embrace, personalities and differences and different styles? If you could speak to that, that would be helpful.
Right now, we're in a hot time where it's very chic to be talking about inclusion. That's a hot topic all across the board. We're an inclusive organization. Clark does that with students, and you can ask a lot of the students, why did you choose Clark? And one of the reasons is because it's an inclusive university. So that word gets used and thrown around a lot. Diversity, inclusion, it's all hot topics. But the one thing about it, regardless of if that team is diverse or that team it includes people, the one thing that includes it, if we're all held to the same standard of evaluation, that's what I'm trying to talk about more than anything, Ashley, is that we have evaluations, and the worst thing to have is have a boss where it's his or her opinion, subjective to what they think, because then you have somebody that's really like a king, and nobody wants to work for a king. You want to work for an organization where we can, my achievement is based on merit. So a meritocracy is the best way I can say it. But if you have that, here's the irony behind it. And this is what I learned years ago in the military. The military is very diverse. It includes everybody. And if it doesn't, you're out because you didn't do the job. If you didn't make it, it's because you weren't tall enough to ride the ride. You don't have what it takes. And it's important to have this feeling that, you know what? I'm a SEAL, or I'm a Green Beret. I'm a member of an elite organization. I'm a member of Chick-fil-A, because if I would just quit a job, I'll go work for McDonald's. There's a difference between that. There's a reason why McDonald's charges X, and I don't want to badmouth any business, but there's a reason why they charge what they do, and why Five Guys and fries, or Five Guys, charge what they do for a hamburger. It's still fast food, but a whole different level of product. And to work at one is different than working for the other. And you could pick businesses all around for that. But I think that one of the results of having, one good, strong standard of performance is it actually lets people know what the bar is. and it makes them feel that they're part of something that's larger than them. I can't think personally of a more inclusive way of involving people. And when you open the barriers where we regardless of our background, we can get there. And it goes back to Dr. King, where you're evaluating people based on the content or the content of their character. And when you start looking at that, that's an important element. So what is the content of the character? Well, it depends. That's a bad answer. It's subjective to opinion. Then your whole thoughts and theories go out of the window. Does that answer your question, Ashley?
Yes, thank you.
A litmus test that I have for something like that goes back to one of the civil rights leaders. I quote her all the time, is Maya Angelou. She says, you can say things, I'm going to paraphrase, but no matter what you say or do, people will remember how you make them feel. And I think that's such an important way of looking at supervision. It's an important way of customer service. People will remember how you make them feel. I mean, we know right and wrong in our heart. We're taught that, and we know what we feel from the time that we're young. And who wants to be a member of an organization where it's just not fair? I don't.
So Tom, hi, how are you?
Good to see you, Julie.
You too. So some great advice and tips and tools that I can put to work right away because I'm in the process of hiring again or still. So the interview process, trying to find out if they have what it takes and putting some pressure on them. I love some of those tips. My big thing too, though, is retention. And I'm wondering, how do we draw the line between giving an employee what they're really looking for, especially these days? And it may be that they've got a late start time and an early finish time. Great for them, and they have legitimate reasons for these requests, but those requests don't work with the job or with the business or with being a good team member because now someone else is picking up the slack. So how do you kind of balance what they're looking for and what they need/want versus what the job really requires?
That's a great question, Julie. Julie's got a franchise called Been There, Dump That, right?
Yes.
So if you need dumpsters, she's the expert. She's the one that's got that, but it's a cool business.
Thanks.
I look at that scenario and going back to military, you're not going to get wealthy ever being a military member, even being you look at what general officers get paid. It's not anything what a good business owner would get paid. But one thing that they have, though, is this recruiting process they're experts at recruiting. You want to see somebody who's really good at sales, go talk to a military recruiter, but don't raise your hand. I promise you that. You might be in service, but what they have is this feeling that, if I'm listening to my boss, we play by the same rules. And if I don't agree with it, fine, I can go somewhere else. But if I go somewhere else, there's somebody younger, badder, and better than me behind me, ready to take that spot. And I know that. I'm going to keep my spot. So it's almost like doing the takeaway and having it where you have a pipeline of people to be on the team. That helps validate that the brand, that internal brand that's there. You always got to have people in the pipeline. If you don't, what you're going to end up having is finding yourself negotiating from a point of weakness with your employees. That's it's sort of like going back to this. Now, I refer back to being a parent a lot of times, and that's not probably the best thing to do because not everybody has kids. But if you look at it, would you negotiate with your kids on standards? Would you negotiate with your kids on what you expect, cleaning the room or whatever that is? No, we don't do that. There's a reason. And when they get older, they're going to do the same thing with their kids because we're instilling that habit in them. So to answer you specifically, Julie, what I think you have to do is keep those standards that are there and have a good pipeline of talent that's coming through. And if they don't like it, fine. Okay. I've really enjoyed you working here, but we've got somebody ready to take your spot next.
And I wish that were the case. I wish I had all these people lined up, ready to jump on board, but that's tricky these days. It's just trying to get that right person in here, one right person. And sometimes I feel like we're even hiring out of desperation. And I've realized over the years that that's not the right thing to do. You're better off just not taking as many jobs, for example, rather than having the wrong person in there. But yeah, so just getting those people that are willing to work these days has been tough.
Hiring out of desperation. I love that you said that. Unicorns, as Jennifer said earlier, we're looking for unicorns. It's hard to find good people. Is that because there's fewer good people?
It's like a woman who hits 40 and trying to find a husband and all the good ones are taken. I don't know. And you gotta wait until they get divorced. But so many, I feel like the good people, work ethic people, they're probably already working. So yeah, just trying to find those people who are available to meet our needs. But you know what, I'm willing to be somewhat flexible, and I think that will help as long as I do it across the board. Probably, what's right for one person has to be offered to everybody, type of thing, and still finding a way to make it work for the business.
Will you sacrifice your core values just to get somebody in the spot?
No.
Can I just ask where, because it's been a while since I've recruited, this is probably for Jennifer and Julie, where do you advertise or how do you find people these days?
I've had decent luck with Indeed.
Okay.
Terrible luck with Facebook. And now I'm actually going to put a sign out by my sign by the road, now hiring. Maybe, they'll see been there, dump that and want to come in. I'm going to try the Leominster Career Center. I have not tried that yet. Craigslist has been a no good. I don't like the way ZipRecruiter works. So I guess Indeed is so far to date where I've found the best people.
Jennifer, what about you?
Yeah, I would say the same. To give you some, because I know, Tom, you probably are the numbers guy. You like the statistics. So I would say on an average week, I'm reaching out to maybe 1,800 or so candidates. I'd take all my time to dig through Indeed, and I'm actively pushing out, hey, inviting them to apply, and it might yield a couple people that we hire.
Is that for one store?
Whether or not they last, that's the that's the key.
Wow.
Is that 1,800 for one store?
Between the two.
Stores.
Right now, we're looking to hire 50 people, and I mean, it's it's really challenging.
Here's what I want to highlight on that. It is challenging. Yeah. I understand that, but 1,800 for two stores to hire 50 people. Do the math on that. Now, how many candidates do you have, Julie?
I usually get, say 15 people will apply. I can kind of immediately eliminate about half. I'll reach out to the other half and never hear back from them. So I'm like, why are you applying in the first place? I would have been so excited if I applied for a job and heard back. And then we get to the next stage where I'm inviting them for either a Zoom or an in-person interview, and then they don't show up. So I almost, out of all of this, I might have two people that I actually will talk to and have an in-person interview, and maybe then I feel like I only have one to choose from that really fits the bill. So
well,
yeah, Tom, I was gonna say the other thing that we're really trying right now is and obviously, Julie, like, we have a bigger staff than you, so I wish there was more I could do to help you too, but we're trying with employee referrals right now. So we've always offered like a $50 referral fee. We just upped it to $150 for anyone. And they only have to work 30 days. Like, we're like, okay, just get them in here for 30 days. I mean, the turnover in our industry is so high as it is. Chick-fil-A realistically has better opportunities with that than other brands. However, it's even challenging for us. So Julie, we're in Leominster. We'll connect after this. I might have someone that might be interested if it's a part-time position. So networking, that's a good one. Employee referrals. And we've started to do, like, personally reaching out to churches, community organizations, like the Chamber of Commerce. I know Marlboro, where we have a location, I'm working with the Marlboro Economic Development Council. Like, mass hire has been hit or miss, maybe for your position, because you might be able to pay more, but for someone in the restaurant industry to pay, $13.50 minimum wage up to maybe 15, depending upon if they're working in the kitchen. I mean, we don't have our hourly wage, because we have so many people, we can't go as high, but I'll do what I can to help any of you. So reach out.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Dave
Can
Ramsey.
either one of you use temporaries? Like, is that a temporary service or?
I have not for drivers. I
Okay.
find that, well, I haven't found a temp service, or I haven't looked in a while, but one that offers actually drivers.
Yeah.
But maybe they're out there.
Jennifer, no go for.
We have, not only myself, we've hired recruiting firms similar to what Mildred does. So we have two different firms that are working with us right now. We obviously pay a percentage to them, and et cetera. We're on Snag-a-Job. We have Indeed. We have Craigslist, ZipRecruiter. I'm working with a new organization in the coming weeks called Hire Me, which is another platform that puts things out there. I've printed countless banners, gone to grocery store parking lots in Worcester and set up pop-up hiring events. We'll hire on the spot. Like, we're literally anything I can do, we're doing it. So if there's other creative ideas, please, Tom, come over here. Let's talk.
Julie, I have found there are some services out there for drivers that are temp type services that's out there. I've learned this from a moving company that's a client, but it's sharing notes. I'll dig that up and I'll find it and I will relay that to you. But it's just like the conversation that we're having right now, is sharing thoughts, creativity, and ingenuity. But listening to the dialogue right there made me think of something Dave Ramsey, who I also like to follow. Dave Ramsey, he'll tell you right away. He says, why do you want to hire somebody who's unemployed? That's like digging in the bottom of the barrel for the good stuff, right? And it also made me think that I've actually done something that now I know that partnership employment doesn't do things like this, but I've consulted with automobile dealers for many years, and we would go to Chick-fil-A routinely and scalp some of their people that are working there and offer to pay them more money and do all this. It's hard to get them from there, but when you did, you would actually get somebody who's working hard that is really good at customer service. Another place that we would recruit from is Enterprise Rent-A-Car. If you want a good young executive, they have one of the best training programs that's out there. And they do a screening process and a training process that's incredible. But Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is a private company, is a good training ground. It's a good place to recruit from. So Julie, what I advise something like that is not looking at a job board to try to attract unemployed people. I would go to find people who have jobs that are doing a good job. If you're out to dinner, or if you're, who has drivers, who has good drivers, UPS, what's the other one? FedEx, any one of those. I don't know that's out there. School bus driver. I don't know. Somebody's got a CDL. I love the fact that Jennifer was talking about going to churches and other groups. That reminded me of birds of a feather flock together. That employee referral program is very powerful. You have people that are on your team right now. You think about this. We love human nature. There's a human trait that we love to refer one another to something that is good service. And if your employees believe in your mission and your culture, they want to refer you. If they don't want to refer you, that's a big warning sign right there. But to be able to do what she's saying, put a bonus plan together where you're reinforcing that, you're going to find that they're going to want to have people come on board. It's not for the money. The money's nice, but the money gets the conversation going. And you could even have a competition that's there. If you're trying to get entry-level employees, whatever that these guys are doing for 2 stores to get 1,800 applicants to work through, that's good by itself. I'd love to learn more about what you guys are doing with how you're screening that, but sharing the message is probably the big thing. And I go back to my midwives. They put little videos together on Facebook. Julie, you said Facebook, it's not generating it for you. Facebook's got lots of people on it. There's other social media tools that are out there, but it's getting in front of people with a message. If you wanted to get in front of a group of people with a message, do you go to Fenway Park and say that message one time, or do you find a smaller group and it's there all the time with the video? Video is very powerful. Our little session, we've been together for an hour, 20 minutes right now. But the time that we're together, if somebody sees this, my takeaway would be, wow, I need to connect with people like Jennifer, Julie, Ashley, the people that are on here, Ronia. I want to be around people like that because they're focused on the business. That's the idea of putting this out in video. And it goes back to what Jennifer said, birds of a feather flock together. I could identify and I can relate to people on that team. I would say it's a branding challenge to sum it down. So if you could tell people what, I never heard of that. I didn't know it was a franchise, but Been There, Dump That is a cool company. Your passion in leading that company, put that together. It makes people want to follow be the Elon Musk of dumpsters.
I love it.
Join your team.
Yeah.
I think, Tom, you said something so important, and what we refer to it here is grassroots recruiting. So it's when you go through the drive-through, at least this is what I do. If I go through another brand, you have to be really careful because you want to be respectful, because I know how hard it is to hire people and you don't want to be a jerk. But if I have a really great experience, I do carry little business card, flyers, if you will, that just says like we're hiring with the application address of where they can go to, and I can write my cell phone on the back if they want to text me for more information. But again, I try to be really respectful in that. But if you find a great person, you never know, they might be happier here, right? Yeah. So
I never knew that Chick-fil-A did that. You got a much nicer way of phrasing headhunting than what I've ever known it being, but I didn't know that you did that with a business card.
Yeah.
I won't tell
Every
anybody.
once in a while. I mean, it's not something that isn't like our mainstream, but as the person that's responsible for that, I dine out with my family a lot. I pay attention to the way that people interact with me in customer service settings. So if I come across someone that I really am like, wow, this person seems like they'd be a great fit, then I do take that opportunity.
Do you have any of those other brands that you would frequent more often and hand out more business cards to?
It's interesting. It's interesting right now because I feel like Dunkin', I have some really good people. Dunkin' seems to have some good people. To be honest, there's some McDonald's people that are really, really friendly. A couple of the ones, I'm not going to say I don't eat at McDonald's, right? Like pretty much everybody does. I think it just depends on the time of day that you visit. It depends on the volume that they're used to. Obviously, we can only hire people that can handle a certain level of stress, because let's be honest, the drive-thru is pretty stressful. So, you got to look for certain characteristics, but we're just doing everything we can. So anyway, I'll put my information in the chat section. So if anybody wants to reach out and talk more after this, I'd be more than happy to brainstorm.
She made me think of when I first came to New England, Dunkin' Donuts, they didn't have them really in the Midwest where I had grown up, and also being in the Air Force, I hadn't seen them. This is a New England thing. Well, my first experience with Dunkin' Donuts, I wanted a cup of coffee. That's all I wanted, and maybe something sweet to go with it. So they have a Dunkin' Donuts on this side of the street, and there's another one on this side of the street in Marlboro. So I picked the one on the side of the street that I was driving. I go through this long bumper to bumper drive through. I get to the window, and it's like, if I don't order quickly, I'm going to have somebody on their horn behind me. So I better do this fast and professional. I'm not a foreigner. I'm not from Kentucky, but I was. So I get up there. I ordered a medium hot regular coffee. Now, to me, if you go in Kentucky, what that is a black coffee. It's medium in size and it's hot. Okay, well, I wanted something to go with it. So here I'm going to be sophisticated. And I said, I want one of those scones. So I don't know what a scone is at the time. So I said a scone, and I get this lady, she's from Brazil, and she just barking off stuff right very fast with a very thick Brazilian accent. No idea what she said, but she understood everything I said. And I get this coffee cocktail. It was like a milkshake, right, with cream and sugar in it. And I get this hard pastry. And what am I going to do with this? So I'm going to ask this question. And as soon as I start to ask the question, the guy behind me is on the horn, and it wasn't a little beep, beep, nice. It was, like, come on, get out of the way, dude. So I learned real quickly that you better catch on board with the culture of Dunkin' Donuts. Those people know how to handle pressure that you're talking about. And if you're going to order coffee, you better know what to expect. Well, I appreciate everybody's time today. We have these, like I said at the beginning, about every 2 weeks. And Sarah's got a mailing list that she puts people out, or puts people's information on. We like to share as much information as we can. There's tremendous resources that are out there, not just with the Small Business Development Center, the SBA, the universities that are there, but Worcester in particular, Worcester County. But we have so many talented students at the 9 or 10 universities that we have. And we also have a lot of resource providers through the Worcester Business Resource Alliance. A variety of backgrounds, but the resources are there. And we got some wonderful people. And like Mildred was saying earlier, there's a lot of cool things going on in the city. We're doing a program right now with Fresh Start Entrepreneurs. These guys are coming out of prison. They've been incarcerated, but one of the things that's out there for them is it's hard for them to get jobs, but they have a lot of passion. They've fallen down before, and we're going to teach them entrepreneurship. So this Fresh Start program that we've got through Labo, which is there with Centro, is a unique program that we have. Going back to what we said earlier, Sarah, knowledge is power. Getting together, we share things together. That's how we gain knowledge. But I've appreciated my time with you, and thank you for sticking around with us. And please use us however you can. Thank you for your time. And what was the plug I'm supposed to say, Sarah? Google?
Oh, yeah. If you want to drop us a Google review on the SBDC at Clark University, but also if you have a business and you would like us to follow you, happy to do so. Just send me your information. I'm also going to send an evaluation on this webinar. It takes 5 seconds online. So we know what we're doing right and what we're not doing, and any future topics you may want to hear from us about.
And that cool new YouTube channel, right?
Oh yeah, we have our YouTube channel. So this will be up here. You guys will be on the big screen. Woo!
Thank you, everybody, for your time. I'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.